Now it's time for my after spring top 25 video. I will be doing one more of these top 25 videos a couple of days before the season begins, but Ohio State is one because m- they, I think, have the best at several positions this year, and I think they may have the best overall coaching staff in the country. Now, I know Kirby Smart is a better head coach than Ryan Day is, but mm, overall, they may have the best coaching staff. And then Georgia, they're I think the deepest team in college football this year, and 3 and 4, Oregon and Texas. I think what separates them from Ohio State and Georgia is defense. All of these top 4 teams are going to have elite offenses, I think, but Ohio State and Georgia, I think, are gonna both have elite defenses, and Oregon and Texas, I think they'll have good defenses again, but I'm not really that sure that they'll have elite defenses. Mm, and Ole Miss, for once, they don't really have any weaknesses on their roster. They have a good quarterback with Jackson Dart, and their offensive line should be stronger with the transfers they brought in, and they've got one of the best wide receiver groups in the country, and their running back room is the deepest in college football this year, and they should be the best defensive line that they've had ever, and I think they're a team that has a chance to win the SEC finally. Uh, and Alabama, I haven't really changed my thoughts on them. Uh, I still think they're going to be good, but not quite as good as last year. But they're still a loaded roster full of talent and could have a chance to beat anybody in the country. And defensively, they didn't look very good in the spring game, but uh, of course, you can't really pass rush in those spring games, so uh, I think they'll still be okay there, but probably not quite as good. And offensive line, that may be the best in the SEC again. And Jalen Milrow is going to be one of the top returning quarterbacks in the country this year. Mm, and Oklahoma State. So you can call me an idiot in the comments if you want to, but they mm, didn't have any starters enter the portal this spring, so they've still got their whole starting offensive line back, and they have an experienced quarterback coming back, mm, and Ollie Gordon may rush for 2,000 yards this year, and they've got a really good group of wide receivers, and on defense, they've got one of the best linebacker units in the country and safety units in the country. They do have a few things on their their team that they do need to improve on, like pass rush, and I'll talk more about that in my Oklahoma State prediction video. But Mike Gundy may be the most underrated coach in the country, and this may be one of his best teams he's had since he's been at Oklahoma State, and he's had a whole lot of good teams. And number 8, Utah. So they're good everywhere, really. With Kyle Whittingham, their defense is going to be pretty good again, and their lines of scrimmage are going to be good. And uh, Cameron Rising looked really good uh, when he played in the spring game, and uh, of course they're going to be able to run the football. So uh, uh, looks like they're going to have a really good chance to make the college football playoff this year. Uh, and then 9 Notre Dame. So Notre Dame brings in a transfer quarterback from Duke who did pretty well there, and wide receiver has been a problem for them for a very long time, and they added in a couple of good wide receivers in the transfer portal. Mm. So he'll have a few good receivers to throw to, and mm, I think they're going to be good at running the ball like they always are, and uh, they should have a good defense again and a good offensive line. And number 10, Michigan. So Michigan did not use the portal to try to fix their problems at quarterback and wide receiver. Their quarterback situation looks like a mess, and they still have no receivers that are going to scare anybody. And overall, their offense, I think, is just really going to struggle. But the good news is that their defense will, I think, keep them in every game this year. I think it's still going to be elite again. Their defensive line will be, I think, top two in the country. Uh, and number 11, Penn State. So their defense will be good, I think, and they're gonna have a good running back unit, but I don't trust Disaster Aller and those wide receivers that they have to do what they need to do in the passing game to get Penn State to be an elite team. Uh, and number 12, Oklahoma. So defensively, they're loaded, and this should be one of the SEC's best defenses. Offensively, there's more concerns with the than there is with the defense, which has uh, not been the case with Oklahoma in a long time. But offensively, I know they probably won't be as good without Dylan Gabriel at quarterback, but I think Jackson Arnold will get better as the season goes on, and uh, they'll turn out to be okay at mm, offense because he's going to have some really good wide receivers to throw to, and that they should have a decent run game this year. Uh, and number 13, Miami. So you may be thinking, here comes the Miami hype, but I've not agreed with the Miami hype ever until now. And their roster is the best in the ACC, and I really think in the third year of this head coach being there, they can finally have a good team with now three really good recruiting classes and one of the best group of transfers this year, and really uh, Miami has got to win this year, or they're going to have to look for a different head coach because there's no more excuses now. And if Miami uh, plays terrible again and finishes 7-5 this year, I'll never put them in my top 25 again until they earn it. So that should be fair enough. And then 14, Florida State. So uh, their defense, I think, is going to be good again, and they're going to be really good, I think, at running the football. But their offense looks one-dimensional to me. I don't like the transfer quarterback that they brought in, and I don't like their wide receiver group. So that's why I don't have them higher. But their offensive line, I think, is going to be strong. And then at 15, LSU. So LSU, I think they'll still be fine at quarterback, but not as good. And their offensive line is going to be elite again. And running back though is a big concern to me. Uh, and they probably won't be as good at wide receiver, but they should still be good. And defensively, uh, I don't really think they're going to be great. They do have a really good group of linebackers. but of course they had a good group of linebackers last year, and their defense was awful. Uh, but uh, I refuse to believe that Brian Kelly is gonna have a terrible defense 2 years in a row. And number 16, Texas A&M. So you're probably thinking with this, here comes the Texas A&M hype, but I've never agreed with the Texas A&M hype either until now. And uh, I looked at their roster, and it's still loaded with talent, even though they lost so many players in the transfer portal. And Elko took a Duke team that had won 3 games the year before he got there to 9 wins in his first year there, and he's going to have so much more talent to work with at Texas A&M than he had at Duke. So I think A&M has a good chance to have a really good team this year. Um, and then number 17, Missouri. So Missouri's offense looks to be in pretty good shape. They're, I think, probably going to be a top 5 offense in the SEC this year. Uh, but defensively, they lose so many players from last year's team. So I really think their defense will just be about average this year. And I know Missouri is getting so much hype because they won that bowl game against Ohio State, who was playing a third string quarterback that couldn't complete a pass from 5 yards away. Well, Ohio State needed to be deeper. Quarterback is a different thing than the other positions. Uh, no team is going to do well at throwing the ball if they're playing a third string quarterback. They're just not. Like, for example, Alabama last year when Jalen Milroe wasn't in there, they were awful on offense. And then Georgia, I can assure you, would not be the same team if Carson Beck wasn't in there at quarterback. Uh, so Missouri also scored only 14 points in that bowl game. Uh, so I think Missouri is overhyped. And then at number 18, Clemson. So I think Dabo Swinney is a good coach, but his stubbornness to uh, use the transfer portal is, I think, going to ruin Clemson's football program and ruin him as a coach. I don't like how out of control the transfer portal is, but uh, nowadays with college football, you've got to use it at least a little to stay close to the top of the sport. And he said the other day why he didn't use the transfer portal this year is because most players in the portal aren't good enough to play for Clemson, which that is true. So many players enter the portal every year now, and most of them aren't any good. Uh, but that was still a crazy thing to say because there are still plenty of players enter the portal uh, every year that could help out Clemson's team. Mm, And I'm just not really that high on Clemson this year. I think they're going to have a really good defense, but I had thought that in year 2 with Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator, Clemson's offense would probably be better, but they still look bad in that spring game. Now, I know you can't know for sure how the team's going to look in the fall just from seeing a spring game, but in the spring games, the defenses can't even be as rough as they are in the games, and Clemson still struggle. Uh, and at number 19, USC. So I have no doubt that Lincoln Riley will put a good offense out there. And defensively, they have talent, but they had talent last year, and their defense was still awful. Uh, and though I do think that their defense will probably be a little bit better than last year because their defense was just so awful last year. It probably can't really get much worse. Mm, so, number 20, Tennessee. I think they're going to have a strong offensive line, and they've got a good group of wide receivers, but uh, I don't really get all the hype that their quarterback is getting because he scored a couple of touchdowns in that bowl game. And their defense, I think, will still be decent, but overall, uh, uh, it won't be great, I don't think. And I think their secondary is really going to struggle this year. Mm, mm. And at number 21, Kansas State. So Kansas State's roster overall is pretty good. They do have to replace a lot of players from last year's team, uh, and mm, running back will be their biggest strength. I think they might have a top 10 rushing offense this year. Uh, and really, though, even if they had to replace their whole roster, I would expect Kansas State to be around the top 25 because Chris Kleeman has proved that he's a good coach. Mm, and number 22, Kansas. So they've got a whole lot of playmakers on offense. And they returned one of the Big 12's top quarterbacks, Jalen Daniels. Now, he will need to be able to stay healthy for Kansas to have a chance to win the Big 12, which he's not been able to do in his time at Kansas. But if he can, Kansas could possibly finish higher than this, and maybe even have a chance to make the 12-team playoff. And their defense is gotten better too, and they've got quite a coach over there with the way they've turned around their program these last couple of years. And then 23, Arizona. So Arizona, I don't think is going to be great on either side of the ball. Their strengths are going to be quarterback and the secondary. Uh, their front seven, I think it is questionable, and on running back, they added in two transfer running backs. That were pretty good at the group of five level, but then one of them left them this spring to go to my Ole Miss Rebels. So running back is the concern for them, and then uh, I think the offensive line is too, and at wide receiver I think it is too. Now I know McMillan is maybe the best receiver in America, but he's one receiver and he's got to have some help, and I'm not sure that he does. And then 24, NC State. So NC State uh, has the defense, obviously, uh, to compete for an ACC championship. Uh, they had that last year, but they didn't really have a very good offense, and I think their offense should be decent this year. Uh, really, last year their problem was poor quarterback play, and they, I think, have fixed that with the transfer portal quarterback that they brought in, and they also have given him some other playmakers to hand the ball off to through the transfer portal. And number 25, Virginia Tech. So you can call me crazy if you want to for putting them in here, but they were turned all 22 of their starters, and they were a pretty good second half of the season team last year. Mm, and they have like 90% of their production coming back from last season. I think they have a chance to win the ACC this year. Uh, and so uh, that will be it with this video. And please subscribe. Thanks for watching. And I'll be back soon.